everyone. Good morning. How are you guys? You guys good?
Yeah.
Good. Just a quick reminder, next week is the 4th of July, so you guys will be all busy celebrating and we will be closed, so we'll have no story time, but we'll be here in 2 weeks. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Savannah Stevenson. She's a DNR specialist, and her assistant, Brooke. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having us. Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day for a story. So I am from Sibley State Park. Whoop. Raising our hands, has anybody ever been to Sibley State Park? Awesome, so a few of you. So there are a lot of fun things to do at the park, and there's a lot of really cool plants and animals. So today we're actually going to read a story about some plants and animals and what happened during a wildfire. So today we're out here celebrating Smokey Bear. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of Smokey Bear. Amazing. So Smokey Bear is awesome. He teaches us about how to avoid wildfires. So wildfires are exactly what they sound like. They're fires that get out of control. So with these wildfires, they can cause a lot of damage to many different places and homes. So it's really important that we manage our wildfires properly. Now the story we're going to read today is about a wildfire that happened in a forest, and it was written by someone named Gianna Marino. And what happened was in 2017 there were some wildfires that happened in California. So she wrote this book and dedicated it to everyone who helped. And the purpose of the book was to kind of help people be a little bit less scared, because it was a really scary time seeing all those wildfires. So we'll get started with our story, and then we'll talk a little bit more about fires and why some plants might actually like a fire. All right, so our story today is called We Will Live in This Forest Again. We have always lived in this forest. Its trees and shrubs were filled with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. In autumn, the leaves and branches crinkled and crunched under our feet. I used to think this forest would always be our home. Until the day a spark flew across the dry treetops. At first we didn't notice. Do you see the little spark? The smell of smoke blew north as the flames began to grow, then turned south towards us. Wind made the fire roar. Fire made the wind roar. Our sky turned dark. I always thought mountain lion was the fiercest animal in the forest, but like me, he was fragile. Before the flames swirled at us again, we fled. Hot cinders spun back and forth across the hills and through the canyons. Wind hissed and roared. Fire snapped at our fur and feathers and hooves and paws, swallowing our trees and blackening our skies. When we finally stopped, there was silence. except for the cracks and pops of fallen trees. The smoke was strong. But we were stronger. In time, our forests will return. The trees and shrubs will once again be filled with birdsong and the rustle of animals. New leaves and shoots will be soft and quiet under our feet. And we will live in this forest again. The end. So in our story, there was a wildfire. And how did that wildfire start? Was it all at once, or did it start with something really small?
Really small.
Really small, you're right. It started with just the tiniest little spark. Where do you think that spark could have come from? Yeah. Do we think maybe it could have come from a campfire? Ooh. Or maybe there was fireworks?
I love fireworks.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways that fires can start. And sometimes when those fires get out of control, like if we think of a campfire, if the wind's really bad, it can blow a spark. And just like in our story where things were really, really dry, if that spark hits a tree or a shrub, it can start a wildfire. But the good news is that there are people whose entire job is to fight these fires. They're known as wildland firefighters. And to fight a fire, you have to understand fire, right? So can you guys make a triangle for me? So these are our fire triangles. So a fire has to have three important things to start. And just like a triangle has 3 points, we're going to use those to remember our fires, what starts a fire. So our top one, can you wiggle your top point of the triangle? Good job. So the top point, that one is oxygen. Can you guys take a big deep breath? We just took in a little bit of oxygen. Fire needs oxygen too. So without oxygen, can the fire burn? No. Can you wiggle this corner down here? Good job. So this corner is heat. So fires have to have heat to be able to start. So if something is super, super cold, it's probably not going to catch fire because it has to warm up first.
Yeah, you can put grease in it.
You can, and grease tends to be pretty hot. Awesome. Can you guys wiggle our last corner? Is this one down here? So this one's a little tricky. This one's called fuel. What do you think a fuel is for a fire? Yeah. Like what? Yeah, like a fire? Yeah. So what do you guys put on campfires? Wood. So you could also put paper or cardboard. And some people use what's called lighter fluid. So a fuel is anything that can burn. So that could be grasses or leaves, like in our story. It could be logs, like in a campfire. Or it could be fuel, like a lighter fluid if you're trying to start the grill or something. Anything that has potential to burn is considered a fuel. So can you guys make your triangles one more time? So a fire has to have all three of these to be able to start. It has to make its triangle. So if one of them falls away, let's say I take away the oxygen. Is it still a triangle? No. And then if it's not a triangle, can the fire burn? No. So those three things, if you could take away one of them, that's how our firefighters manage to stop fire. So we're going to look at each of those and see if we could determine how we would stop each of those. So how do you think we would get rid of oxygen? So you can. Have you ever seen someone put a lid on a candle and then the fire starts to go out? Or have you ever seen anyone kick sand over the fire? So all of those take away the oxygen from fire so it can't burn. So it's a little tricky in things like our forest fires or wildfires to take it all away. So that's usually not the one they try to take away. But they do try to take away this one. This one was heat. How do you think we take away heat from a fire? Yeah. You put water on it. You're right. Have you guys ever been swimming and then you get out and you're kind of cold? Yeah. So water cools us down. And it does the same for fire. So when you see people putting fire on a water, that cools them down. It cools down the fire. And fires can't burn without their heat. So fuel is a little tricky. That's our last part of the fire triangle. How do you think we get rid of fuel? Yeah. By fire.
Water.
So water takes away heat, but that's a great guess. So it is by fire. Did you know sometimes, oh, there goes a squirrel friend. Did you know sometimes you have to burn things so that they can't burn? So oftentimes wildland firefighters will use fire to fight fire, which seems a little weird, but it's a technique called back burning. Now we mentioned that wildfires, they're fires that we don't mean to set, and oftentimes they're little sparks that get away from like a campfire or a grill or something like that. But wildland firefighters, when they set a fire, they do it in a very special way. So I'm going to show you a really cool tool. Brooke here is going to pick it up and show you. This here is called a drip torch. And just like its name suggests, it's a torch that drips. So exactly like that, you would go through and pour. So in this canister would usually be kerosene and diesel, and then they would light the fire up here at the top. And as they poured it, a little bit of that kerosene and diesel would pick up the fire and set a small fire that could be controlled. Now you'll notice my favorite part of the drip torch is this little curl right there. It's not just for decoration, it has a really cool purpose. So if Brooke has a fire right here and you stand it up, sometimes it can catch the fire in this part of the tube, it can light it up. So this little curl stops it from going back into the canister. It also, if Brooke is really clumsy and pours the whole thing, it stops it from coming out too fast. So it can still control the fire just a little bit. And they use this to set fires just a little bit ahead of a forest fire, so it creates a barrier. And it gets rid of the fuel so that the fire can't go any further. It's called back burning. Can you guys say back burning?
Back burning.
Great job. Now another tool that they use, this one has to do with the heat. We use water to put out heat. We have this really cool backpack that they get to carry if you're a wildland firefighter. Brooke's gonna hold it up. This is called a water bag. Some people call it a bladder bag. And it has this little hole right here in the center. And what they do is they fill it up with water, and then they carry it around and spray the little spots that would still be on fire. And this helps get some of this, once the fire's starting to go out, it helps cool down some of the materials. Yeah. Now, have you guys ever tried to carry a bucket of water before? It's heavy, isn't it? Could you imagine if you had to carry it on your back and go all through the forest trying to put out tiny fires? You'd get tired quick, wouldn't you? Especially if it's the summer and it's hot and dry, you would probably get pretty hot too, right? So when we think of firefighters, oftentimes we're thinking of people who have these big coats on and they go into like house fires and stuff. Those are what people normally think of. But a wildland firefighter's uniform looks a little bit different. So Brooke's gonna hold up the pants real quick. They have these nice pair of green pants, and they're really not too thick. So I can show you right here, it's really thin material. And that's so that they don't get too hot while they're fighting wildfires. And then they also have a bright yellow shirt that's not too thick either. And they wear bright yellow because it helps them see each other. Remember how in our story it got kind of dark and smoky? Yeah? So it helps them to see each other, to wear those bright colors. And again, it's not too thick, it's pretty thin. And these have a really cool thing. They look like normal clothes, but they have a really cool quality. They're fire resistant. So that doesn't mean they're fireproof. They can still catch fire, but they're a lot less likely to. If you have a favorite set of PJs, most of the time kids your ages tend to have fire-resistant clothes too. And they're treated in just the same way as a wildland firefighters. Now, some other things that you might need if you're going out to fight a wildfire are these: a helmet and goggles. So oftentimes trees are gonna fall while they're on fire because they're not doing too well. The fire's gonna eat away at them and they're gonna crumple. And the last thing you want is to get bonked on the head by a tree, right? You also need goggles. Has anybody ever stood in the smoke from a campfire? You guys are smarter than I am then. So sometimes when you do, it can hurt your eyes. So having the goggles helps keep smoke out of your eyes. And that's just some of the gear they use. Now, when we're talking about, we talked a little bit about how wildfires start. So what do you guys think? What does Smokey Bear tell us about wildfires? How can we prevent them? Yeah. So some of the ways that we can prevent wildfires are making sure that we tend to them properly. Should you walk away from a campfire that's burning? No. You want to make sure it's completely out before you walk away from it. Or if it's really, really windy, do you think you should set a fire? No, because sometimes it'll pick up little sparks and blow them away. Now, Smokey Bear has a saying. Raise your hand if you know Smokey Bear's saying. All right, what is it? Exactly. Only you can prevent wildfires. So Smokey Bear does have that right, and a lot of wildfires start because of people, but some of them start on their own. Have you guys, we had a few storms this past week. Did anybody see lightning? Yeah. So sometimes lightning can cause strikes, but those fires they tend to be a little bit different. A lot of times they can start in areas where the plants actually like fire. Can you believe a plant would like fire?
Yeah.
Yeah. So some of our plants that you guys might see out here in the wild today, anybody like wildflowers?
Wildflowers.
Yeah, some of our wildflowers love fire, and they have a really cool way to survive fire. Do you want to see how they survive it? Awesome. So I'm going to show you two really cool plants. We're going to do a plant called lead plant. Lead plant is a little purple flower. It's just starting to bloom. So Ranger Brooke is going to help me measure it out. How tall do you think lead plant is? Show me with your fingers. Do you think 5? Do you think 3, 4? I'm seeing a lot of 4s and 5s. Should we find out? Awesome. So we're going to go straight down. So lead plant is a beautiful plant, and it only comes up to about right there. It's 3 feet tall. So it's probably tall as some of you guys here in the audience today. It's a pretty good sized plant. It's a beautiful one. It has beautiful purple flowers on them. But this is just a small part of the plant that we see. On top of the ground, we see the flowers. What happens underneath? What goes on under the ground? What part of the plant? Yeah. Roots. Good job. How tall do you think the roots are going to be for a plant that's 3 feet tall?
A sunflower.
Yeah? Oh, I see a 10. Yeah, does anybody think bigger or smaller? Ooh, I see 8 over there. I see a 5, 10. Should we find out? Yeah. All right, so we're gonna go this way because I'm not quite tall enough to reach super, super high. So this is 1 foot right here. Ranger Brooke's gonna walk backwards. Can you guys help me count? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Let's go. 10.
Yeah. So they have 10-foot long roots. And those roots are what help them survive the fire. So if a fire came through and our little plant's only 3 feet tall, what's going to happen when that fire hits the ground and the plant's all gone? It'll go out, right? And are the roots going to be okay because they're underground? Yeah. So what does that mean for our plant?
It's okay.
It grows back. It's going to be okay. So there are a bunch of flowers that do that. You guys want to do one more? All right, we're going to do one of my favorites. So one of my favorite plants is a plant called compass plant. It's a yellow flower that grows super tall. Showing me some numbers, how tall do you think a compass plant grows? It's a big yellow flower. I see 10 feet. I see 6. I see 7. I see 5. I see 10. All right, should we find out? Oh, I see 10. Okay, here we go. Can you help me count? Brooke, can you hold that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, that's how tall the compass plant is. They're a big yellow flower.
How big is a sunflower?
So they can vary in size. It depends on the type of sunflower. This one looks a lot like it. How long do you think the roots are going to be on a 6-foot plant? I saw 20. I saw 1. I see 1 there. I see 1. Oh, I see 10. 10. Should we find out? 20? Okay, let's find out. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh my goodness. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh my goodness. She's so far away. Could you imagine 20 feet of roots underneath a little plant? That's a lot. So do you think that the compass plant is good at surviving a fire? It sure is. Those are pretty long roots. We can do one more. Alrighty. So the next one we're gonna do, have any of you guys ever heard of blazing star?
No.
So blazing star is a beautiful flower. It tends to be a little purple. Some people think it looks pink. I personally think it looks a little pink. And it looks like it has little fingers that come off. It makes one pretty flower. Can you guys make fingers? Good job, good job. So it has these little fingers that come off and it looks like it's a pink little fire. So that's why it's called the blazing star. How tall do you think blazing star is? I'll give you a hint, they're a smaller plant. So I see 10. Anybody else got a guess? I see 2, 1. I see 4, I think. 5. Oh, I see 3 and a 10. Awesome. Should we find out? All right. So it is going to come up to 1, 2. It's a small little plant. How big do you think the roots on this plant are going to be? Huh?
20.
I hear 20, 15, 18. Oh my goodness, should we find out? All right. I'm hearing 19, all kinds of different numbers. So you guys are actually really close. Can you help me count? All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Oh my goodness! A little 2-foot tall plant has 15 feet of roots underneath our feet. How cool is that? So when we look at plants, we really, especially some of our native plants around here, we really only see a small little part of the plant. And that's their trick to being able to survive fires. And some of these plants, if they don't get fire, they don't bloom as pretty. So we actually have to set fire to them on purpose. And those are called controlled burns. Can you guys say controlled burns? Good job. And a controlled burn is one that we set on purpose so that we can help these plants. So sometimes they'll put up a ton of green and ton of flowers, and then over fall, those flowers die. And then it can actually cover the ground and smother the roots. And then they can't grow back beautiful. So it's really important that sometimes we have fires that are good for the area. So as you're kind of going out and exploring, remember how Smokey Bear teaches us to prevent wildfires because we don't want to set them on accident. But also remember that not all fire is bad. There are still some good fires that are good for our plants. So if you guys would like, we are going to lay out all of our gear. You're welcome to come make a line and check out some of this fire gear. You can check out our water bag, and you can see just how thick that clothing is. I promise it's a lot thinner than you think it might be. And you can take a look at our helmet and our drip torch, all right? And then we actually have some coloring books for you guys too. Who likes to color? Awesome, I like to color too. So we'll hand out those coloring books as we go, okay? So thank you guys all so much for coming to story time and learning about fires. And remember what Smokey Bear teaches us, how to prevent them. So what are some things we can do to prevent wildfires? Huh? Yeah, stay with our fires, right? Should we set them when they're windy? No. Yeah, make sure you keep water nearby. Good job. Yeah. Alrighty, thank you guys so much for coming out today. You guys have been so much fun. And as you take a look at some of our wildflowers, also keep in mind how long those roots are. They're pretty darn cool, aren't they? Awesome. Thank you, everybody.